Welcome back to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into the source material you've shared today.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
And we're tackling a question that's, well, it's ancient and incredibly complex. To whom does the Promised Land belong?
Hmm, definitely not one with an easy answer.
No, not at all. And the sources, they reflect that. They really invite us to look at this through um, multiple lenses, often conflicting ones.
That's right.
So our mission here is basically to unpack the key insights, the different perspectives from this material, and help you get a clearer picture of this really challenging topic.
Absolutely. It's a topic with so many layers: belief, history, politics, ethics. The material touches on all of them.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Where do the sources suggest we start?
Well, the logical starting point and where the sources begin is with the biblical and you could say mythological view.
Right, the foundational beliefs.
Exactly. This perspective is really rooted in a belief system going back, what, roughly 3,000 years?
Hmm.
And the core idea is that Yahweh understood as the one true God made this divine promise. He granted this specific land to his chosen people, the Jews.
But what's fascinating, and the material highlights this, is that the actual size of this promised land, well, it isn't clearly defined in the Bible.
No, it's quite ambiguous.
Yeah, our sources mentioned at least 6 different descriptions. It ranges from something tiny like, I don't know, the size of a football field, metaphorically speaking,
Right.
all the way up to potentially the entire Middle East. That ambiguity feels pretty significant, doesn't it?
It really does. It highlights just how much room there is for interpretation. But despite that variation in the definition of the borders, the material really stresses that for those who take the Bible literally.
Okay, like religious Jews,
Mhm.
fundamentalist Christians.
Precisely.
Hmm.
For them, the promise itself, the divine grant of land, is considered absolute. It's, undisputed.
And critically, the sources also point out that even if you personally view these as, say, stories or myths,
Right, even if you don't share the belief.
they're still incredibly important. Just because millions and millions of people believe them so deeply, they matter to people.
Exactly. That's a crucial point. And this deep connection to the land isn't just for one group. It links the 3 major Abrahamic faiths: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They all worship the same God, and they all see this land as, well, essential.
And you really see the power of this in the examples the material gives, don't you?
Absolutely. Like the Jewish Passover Seder ending with "next year in Jerusalem."
Yeah, that phrase carries so much weight. Or the description of Christian pilgrims weeping in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
The emotional connection is palpable, and of course, for Muslims, the profound significance of sites like the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
So these aren't just dusty old narratives. They are living, breathing forces shaping lives right now.
Without a doubt, they affect how millions feel and act today.
Okay, so that's the sort of foundational claim rooted in belief. What about the historical angle? What does the evidence tell us? Right, the sources shift gears there. They look at the historical record and they confirm, yes, there's evidence Jews lived in the land around 1000 BC.
Okay.
And they formed 2 states, Samaria up north, capital, maybe Nablus, maybe Shechem, and Judea down south, with Jerusalem.
But as the material points out, the location itself presented a huge challenge.
Geopolitically, you mean?
Exactly. It's right there at the crossroads, Africa and Asia, wedged between, ancient superpowers like Egypt and Babylonia.
Making it a constant target.
Always. Larger empires always wanted to control that corridor.
And the sources then detail this long history of foreign rule. First up, the Babylonians in the 6th century BC.
Right. They conquered the Jewish states. And their strategy, according to the material, involved deporting the elite.
Yeah, about 1,200 people, the sources estimate, though they were apparently allowed back later.
Yes. Then after them came the Greeks. Alexander the Great, 4th century BC.
And their approach was different.
Yeah, the sources say they aimed to Hellenize the place, basically spread Greek culture, especially among the Jewish elite.
Which caused some friction, I gather.
It did. It led to divisions. Some adopted Greek ways, but others, like the Zealots, resisted fiercely to preserve their traditions.
Okay, so Babylonians, Greeks,
Well,
then the Romans.
then the Romans, yeah. And their approach, the sources suggest, was maybe simpler, more direct.
So.
They just integrated the land fully into the Roman Empire. Roman laws, Roman roads, Roman culture. Standard Roman procedure, really.
And this period also saw major Jewish revolts against Roman rule.
Yes, significant ones. The sources place them a few decades after Jesus' time, ending decisively in 70 AD and then again in 135 AD.
And a key outcome from these revolts, highlighted in the material, was the defeat of the Jews and their widespread dispersion.
Right. Across the Roman world and even beyond. This is what became known as the diaspora.
The diaspora. And the sources describe the Jewish experience during this long period. It wasn't easy.
No, generally not. Often living as minorities, facing discrimination, second-class status, and, sadly, frequent persecution.
And this lasted for centuries, right? Until the emancipation movements.
Pretty much, until, the 18th century onwards, when movements for equality started opening doors for Jews to integrate more into Western societies.
But that long history, that memory of persecution,
Yeah.
it left a deep mark.
A very deep mark. And the material emphasizes this, culminating, tragically, in the 20th century with the Shoah, the Holocaust.
Where millions were systematically murdered by the Nazis.
Yes. And the sources point out how that unimaginable event continues to profoundly shape Jewish identity, the Jewish mentality, even today.
So this connects to the political developments that followed emancipation then.
Exactly. As Jews started gaining equal rights in places like, say, the young United States or post-revolution France, they could pursue any profession, participate fully.
And the material notes this led to a shift in thinking, a change in aspirations.
Right. They started seeing other peoples around them, organizing, seeking self-governance, national autonomy.
And they thought, well, why not us?
Pretty much. If other nations could have self-determination, why shouldn't the Jewish people?
Which gave rise to a specific political movement.
Yes, the sources mention the Friends of Zion. They began organizing around 1897, aiming to establish a Jewish homeland.
And the material points to two key strategies they used. Quite clever, actually.
Very strategic. First, they were apparently very effective at fundraising. They set up a fund that amazingly still exists.
Wow. And second?
Second, they worked quietly, sort of under the radar of the Ottoman rulers at the time, building parallel institutions.
Like what sort of institutions?
Things like banks, a university, a trade union, even proto-ministries, laying the groundwork for a state.
And this organizing went on for decades.
About 50 years, the sources indicate, and it eventually led to a major political breakthrough.
The UN decision in 1947.
Correct. The UN granted the right to establish a Jewish state in 1947, and the state itself was declared in 1948.
Now, the sources are careful to present the different perspectives on this moment from the Jewish viewpoint.
From the Jewish perspective, as the material describes it, this was the realization of an ancient dream, a return after 2 millennia of diaspora. It was seen as creating a vital safe haven.
The never again idea.
Exactly. A place where Jews wouldn't face persecution, where they could live as a sovereign people, like others.
But then there's the other side, the Palestinian perspective.
Yes, and the material contrasts this sharply. For the Palestinians already living there, the arrival of Zionist settlers and the establishment of the state looked very different.
How did they see it?
They tended to see it as another wave of, well, powerful Westerners coming in. The sources mention comparisons, maybe uncomfortable ones, to the Crusaders.
And their experience was one of loss.
Profound loss, yes. The material describes it as a gradual expulsion from homes, from villages, losing their land. They call this the Nakba, the catastrophe.
So the loss of land, homes, and also a sense of their culture being erased.
Yes, a feeling that their Muslim culture, which had been there for something like 900 years, was being threatened or overridden.
It's really striking how the sources use those parallel terms for catastrophe. Shoah for the Jews.
Meaning catastrophe.
And Nakba for the Palestinians.
Also meaning catastrophe. The material really frames it as catastrophe on both sides.
And the sources wrap up this historical political section with a kind of reality check.
Yeah, sort of. They make the point that while these myths and histories are deeply important to people,
They can't on their own justify exclusive rights to the land today or solve the modern conflict.
right. And they also acknowledge that political realities change, power shifts. Currently, Israelis hold significant advantages, military, economic, diplomatic.
Partly due, the sources suggest, to global sympathy after World War II.
That's mentioned as a contributing factor, yes.
Okay, so this leads us to the final lens the sources explore, which feels maybe the most difficult. The ethical and moral dimension.
Yes, perhaps the toughest part. Because for many people today, the sources suggest the conflict isn't just about ancient history or religion anymore.
It's more about living memories, emotions, competing claims of justice.
Exactly. It's about raw emotions,
Hmm.
deeply held ethical beliefs colliding.
And the material tries to lay out this ethical deadlock pretty clearly.
It does. On one side, you have the Jewish ethical argument. It goes something like this. We endured millennia of persecution, oppression, discrimination, culminating in the Shoah near annihilation.
A unique history of suffering.
A unique history, yes.
Hmm.
Therefore, and the sources stress that, therefore, based on that suffering, we have a fundamental right to our own state, and specifically in this ancestral land we were driven from.
Okay. And the Palestinian ethical argument.
The Palestinian argument, as presented in the sources, essentially says, we recognize the Holocaust, we acknowledge Jewish suffering, but, and that but is crucial, that suffering doesn't give you the right to come here, seize our land, displace us in the Nakba, and maintain what we perceive as an ongoing occupation.
It's just two powerful moral claims hitting head on.
A collision, exactly.
Yeah.
Two deeply felt narratives of justice and injustice, seemingly irreconcilable, as the sources describe it.
So let's circle back then. We started with the question, based on these sources, to whom does the Promised Land belong? What kind of answer does the material offer, if any?
Well, it offers a conditional answer, a nuanced one. The sources suggest the land belongs to everyone who lives there.
Okay.
But, and it's a huge but, on the condition that they respect the rights and aspirations of everyone else living there too.
Respecting everyone else's rights and aspirations, given everything we've just unpacked from the material?
Exactly. Given the deep conflicting myths, the contested histories, the political realities, those powerful colliding ethical narratives.
Fulfilling that condition seems incredibly difficult, maybe, almost impossible in practice.
It highlights the immense challenge, which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to mull over, really building on the sources.
Yeah.
In a place marked by such profound, competing claims to history, to land, to identity, to justice, how can that mutual respect for the rights and aspirations of everyone actually be achieved?
A heavy question to end on, drawing from everything we've looked at.
Yeah.
It certainly is.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today.